Hello. Okay, this is part 9 of why Senator Mitch McConnell is wrong when he says we don't have a taxing problem, we don't tax too little. Now I want to pick up where I left off in part 8. I was talking about Americans for Tax Reform. That organization, which is founded, and by Norquist, and he's the president, it promotes the anti-tax pledge and monitors it. Here's how it works. If you're running for office and you don't sign the pledge, you're not likely to get funding for your political campaign from the corporations and the very wealthy who fund the Republican Party. And if you renege on the pledge, they're going to target you for defeat when you come up for re-election. Now, that's not the way that democracy is supposed to work. Congressmen are supposed to represent the people and exercise their constitutional powers without any restrictions. Now, if you sign the pledge to get funding for your political campaign, you can't do that. It is like, for example, if you marry somebody when you're engaged to somebody else, that's immoral. You got to break off that engagement. Same with the pledge. You can't sign the pledge and take the oath of office because they conflict. One abnegates the other. Now, this debt here of $17,500,000,000,000 is the accumulation of fiscal year deficits. It's the amount of money that the federal government has spent in excess of tax revenues. Now, by the end of this year, it's likely to reach close to $18 trillion. Now, how does the government get the money to pay for these expenses if it doesn't raise taxes? Well, it borrows the money. How does the government borrow money? Well, it sells U.S. treasuries. That comes with the additional cost of interest. For 2009, the cost of interest on debt was $383 billion. For 2010, $414 billion. For 2011, $454 billion. Now you see, as debt goes up, the cost of interest goes up. For 2012, the cost of interest on debt was $360 billion. Now, why is it here debt is higher and the cost of interest is lower? Well, one reason for that is the Federal Reserve increased the money supply and brought interest rates down. The yield on 10-year treasuries dropped all the way down to 1.39. Now, that was a record. Also, the federal government financed debt, the national debt, by selling short-term treasuries, which had a lower yield than long-term, next to zero. Now that it was a temporary solution because now interest rates are rising again. The cost of debt, the national debt on of the year 2013, now that was last year, $451 billion. Now, I'm I'm going to go to this chart right here, or picture. It is a breakdown on how debt is divided. The tax dollar is divided. And I have a larger picture here to show you. It says here where your 2013 debt dollar went. And I just told you for this year, it was last year it was $451 billion. Now look here. See, the largest part of the tax dollar goes to the military, 27 cents. The next largest part of the tax dollar goes to healthcare, 23.7 cents of the dollar. What do you think the largest, third biggest part of the dollar goes? Where it goes, the tax dollar? Interest on the federal debt, 13.9. Now, that is more than the cost of government, education, transportation, energy and environment, housing and community, all combined. Now look at, for the interest on debt, you get no goods and services, zero. You get more time to pay for debt. Now as debt goes up, interest takes a bigger bite out of this tax dollar. That's why you don't want to allow the national debt to go higher and higher in ratio to GDP. Now, as this debt here gets higher, well, first of all, let me just tell you this. I'm going to add up here the interest on the cost of interest on the debt for the 5 years that Obama's been in office. And it comes to, can you believe this? $1,611 billion. Now, as debt gets higher, the cost of interest gets higher. And that acts as a drag on economic growth, the exact opposite effect that we're trying to achieve. It's just like in a horse race, you put more money, more weight on a horse, it runs slower. The same with the debt. This debt has to be repaid, and the higher it gets, the more it costs to serve that debt by paying the interest. And that acts as a weight or burden on taxpayers. Now, how did we get ourselves into this situation with this exploding debt? Could reach 18 trillion by the end of the year, more or less. Well, it started here with Reagan. Prior to Reagan, with these higher interest rates here on income, tax on the estate tax, on dividends, on corporations here, on the capital gains tax, we paid for World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and we brought debt to GDP, that's gross domestic product, down from 121 all the way down here to 33. Now, what happened? Well, the people elected Reagan. What did he do? Well, he changed the graduated income tax from, which had 16 brackets here and rates from 0 to 70. And he changed that into a converted that to a two-tiered flat tax and put the nation on the road to bankruptcy. Now, I went back and looked at some of Reagan's speeches, and what I found is that he was either an idiot or suffering from early stages of dementia, because he made a lot of statements that didn't make any sense at all. And I'm going to read you one here. This is 1982 on national TV. Reagan said, "The policies we have in place will reduce the deficit steadily, surely, and completely." He said that. Now what he's referring to here is that the Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981, the year before, that reduced the top rate here from 70 all the way down to 50. That's a big tax cut on wealthy people. It took off the five top rates and brackets: 54, 59, 64, the 68, the 70. And well, he also increased here the estate tax exemption. That's the tax cut on the wealthy. And he reduced the capital gains tax here from 28 all the way down to 20. That was supposed to reduce the deficit. Surely, and steadily and completely. Now, you know that Reagan appeared on the Johnny Carson show back in 1975. And Carson asked him if he was thinking about running for president. And he said, yes, maybe, if the nation had if the nation needed deficit reduction, he would balance the budget. But you know what? During the 8 years that Reagan was president, he added $1.8 trillion to the national debt. Now that's twice as much, more than twice as much as all presidents preceding him, going all the way back to George Washington. Now, something else happened here when Reagan was president, and that was the founding of the Americans for Tax Reform in 1985 by Norquist, and he had Reagan's backing. Now, let me read you something here, what that organization states. It says it opposes all tax increases as a matter of principle. Well, you know what? That principle has been embedded in the Republican Party. Now, why do I say that? Because 95% of Republicans have signed the pledge. Norquist was on 60 Minutes, and he was speaking to Steve Croft, and he said it would be hard to imagine a Republican winning a primary without signing the pledge. Meaning, if they did not agree to block all tax increases, they would not get funding from these large corporations and wealthy who fund the Republican Party. And he said, if you sign the pledge, you win the primary. That is, you get funding for your political campaign. Now that pledge is unconstitutional because it prevents you from exercising your congressional power to raise taxes to pay for government expenses. Now, is my time up?